Fitz of riding.
Hey there, Scribbles and Scratches. Welcome to the Fitz of Writing. I am your host this episode, R.M. Johnson, and as always, for my own creative edification and your entertainment, we bring yet another sacrifice upon that most wicked altar we call the internet. This week, I'm talking with Orion Gregory. He is an award-winning writer in newspaper and advertising, as well as a contributor to a nationally published magazine. Narratively speaking, he specializes in murder mysteries. So, ooh, how thrilling! Welcome to the show, Orion. How you doing?
Oh, fine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this today.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna be honest with everyone. This is the second time Orion and I have talked. So he promised me that he's going to do his absolute best to sound surprised when I ask questions and answer them as though it's his first time answering them. It was a thing that happened. Just it happens in the system. We had a glitch. It kicked out the video, so all the data was lost. And we're gonna give it a shot here. It has been about a week, so his answers aren't exactly fresh in his head. So let's start with where your story begins as a writer.
Okay. Well, as a kid, I started reading murder mysteries just because I like to figure out puzzles and stuff. And then in third grade, I'll never forget, we had to write a lot of stories in third grade. We had projects like that, and the teacher used to pick me to read mine out to the class most of the time. So I liked the way people would listen to my stories, and I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. People are listening to what I'm writing, and they seem to enjoy it. So I kind of like this. So I never forgot my roots, so to speak. So after that, was a communications major in college. Um, Parlayed that into getting into writing for little small advertising firms, newspapers. I did some freelance for magazines, but then we decided, my wife and I, to have kids, and we decided it would be best if we actually fed them. So we had to make a little more money. So I went into a career in sales, and I paid the bills. And my wife and I worked together, brought up our kids, but I never forgot my penchant for writing. And I did small writing projects throughout my sales career. But when I retired, I said I'm only going to do things I love from now on, and writing is definitely one of them. So now all I do, besides a few other things like teach tennis and coach tennis, I write, and I write murder mysteries, and I completely love it.
So, how long were you in sales? I'm curious because Sean and I are also kind of in sales. Two different industries.
I think it was too long. No.
So 2 days.
25, 30 years. Yes. 25, 30 years. And I didn't mind sales. It was a way to make a living, but it didn't light my fire. You know what I mean? It was a way to pay the bills, and I was good at it. I wouldn't say I was fantastic, but I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a true passion of mine. And I always wanted to get back to my real passion. And I feel like I'm doing that now. So better late than never, right?
Yes, 100%. Was the communication arts degree you got, do you feel like that kind of helps with your starting the journey of writing and the process of it?
Yeah, there was a lot of writing in college, and I kind of worked on my skills. I thought I was really good when I got out of high school, and then the high school professors knocked me in the dirt and said, "Give me 50."
Yeah,
and I learned real quick I wasn't as good as I thought. So
we
I
all
kind of
think
tried
we're good
to
in high school. Yeah,
I know. I thought I was really good. So I got better at it, and it more than that, even communications, the major at that time. Obviously, communications is so different today than when I went to school. I mean, it's a totally different way we communicate now. I mean, I wanted to be a newspaper writer, and now when I see a newspaper, it looks like a relic to me. I see a newspaper on the table, I'm like, a newspaper. I got to remember what that feels like. You just don't see it anymore.
Isn't that like the stuff you line cages with?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So it prepared me, and it got us out of our shell. It got us to communicate with each other, taught us to write better. So it did a lot of great things that I parlay that. And even in sales, it helped me communicate with people. So it was a valuable degree, but just totally different communications back when I went to school and what's happening now.
And from our last conversation, I know that you are a Browns fan. I'm a Bears fan. We recently had a
Okay.
victory. I don't know if that's the same for you guys. I don't follow the Browns.
In preseason, we're perfect, but where does that and a dollar get you a hamburger on the McDonald's dollar value menu? So
Yeah.
we'll see.
And so you have a love of sports, and that kind of fed into tennis. When did you start really enjoying tennis, and then
Well,
decide to start
I
coaching it?
good question. I never picked up a racket till I was 13, and I belonged to a swim club which was right across from my house, and they built tennis courts right at the swim club, and it was right across the street from me. So my dad, knowing really nothing about tennis, bought me a racket and threw me a can of balls and said, "Have fun this summer." So I spent the next 5 years virtually doing nothing but playing tennis. And I learned the wrong way because there wasn't good teaching back then. And my parents didn't have a lot of money to, send me to lessons every week. My dad thought if he took me for one lesson, that was it for the rest of my life. So it's really not like that. But so I went out there and I played tennis for 5 years, doing it the wrong way, but got good enough doing it badly to make the college team. So,
Okay.
so I had a million bad habits, and I probably still did even in my 40s. But I really wanted to help kids I wanted to teach them right from the beginning, so the path wasn't so serpentine to get there.
Yeah.
Because I felt that it was a long way for me, and I learned a lot. But I think that of not knowing the right way and now knowing the right way, it made me a better teacher.
And I think that brings us to the point of the whole podcast is you released a book originally. Excuse me. You released a book originally meant as a standalone called Faults,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that follows Sydney Livingstone, who is a tennis player that gets mixed up in some dirty business. Yep, it's a
Yes.
wonderful cover. I love how simple the cover is. We talked about that
Yeah,
last
blood
time.
on a tennis ball. You don't normally see that.
No, and who did
So,
the cover again for that one?
it was Dark Frog. They did an excellent job for me. They're a really good publisher. I think they're in the East somewhere, and they did a really good job both editing it, laying it out, and doing the cover. So they did a wonderful job for me on the first one.
Yeah, you guys should definitely check them out. And so that brings us into where let's talk a little bit about that. I think last time we were trying to figure out the difficulty of kind of blending sports with a murder mystery. You want to give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for tennis fans years ago, um, I think it was Monica Seles. Yeah, she was playing in a tournament in Germany, I believe. And this was before they really guarded the players like they do now. You can't get to a player now. But you could back then. People were more trusting. I believe it was in the 90s. And some jerk came out of the stands and actually stabbed her in the back while she was waiting to, in a court break.
Yeah.
So, and her career was paused for 2 years while she recuperated from that. She could have died on the scene. But so I parlayed that into, I read a lot of tennis players, believe it or not, are stalked when they compete, especially the women.
Yeah.
People get a fetish. They watch them on TV and they become enamorized with these people and they think they got a connection, even though they don't. And they start contacting them and following them. And most of the time it's nothing serious, but occasionally it is. And so that gave me the idea of what if there's someone on the tennis tour, maybe not the best player, maybe just an average player that someone is stalking and we don't know why. And that's how the story began in my mind, and it went from there.
And I don't want to spoil too much about the original story.
Mm-hmm.
So when you originally wrote it, you'll have to refresh my memory on this. Did you end it with the idea of like, I feel like I'm going to continue this, or was there like a grace period between when you ended and then you were like, I'm going to write another story? I feel like bringing Livingstone back.
Yeah, I wrote it when I was writing it. I had the intent it was going to be one and done. This would be the end of the book. But as I got farther involved, I thought, this could grow. And I didn't really realize as much that your characters grow as people. They actually progress along with you and they evolve. And my character was Sydney Livingstone, who was the tennis player that was being stalked at the time on the pro tour. She evolved and she grew, and she had a degree in criminal justice. So I thought, what if, she's not a tennis player making millions of dollars. A lot of people think all these tennis players are rich. They're really not. The top ones do really well, but the struggling ones, they're lucky to pay their bills and have a few extra dollars because they have to travel, they have to get their own sponsors. So
Mhm.
Sydney is kind of in that. And then she has a degenerative hip condition where the doctors say, look, it's not going to kill you or anything, but you can't play at the professional level for much more than a year because your hip is deteriorating. So she can still be a police officer, but to play at the top of the tennis world, she can't. So she decides, maybe I should put my degree to work and become a police officer, serve the community in a different way.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that kind of carries us into what you're currently pushing out. Is it already released? Or are you releasing it?
Oh, you're talking the second one?
Yes.
Yes, serves you right. It came out on the 8th of July, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so it is out there. You guys should definitely take a look at it. I love the cover art of that. If he
I'll
doesn't
show
have,
you the cover art here. I got that right here. Now, this one I've written on a couple. This is my original, but you can see it's got it serves you right. There's actually a grave underneath there. It's a woman with the background, and you can see where somebody possibly has been buried there and
Mhm.
stashed or whatever, and kind
Yeah,
of the mysterious look. So
yeah, it gives very like True Detective vibes. I love it.
yes, yes,
And who did the cover of that one?
Publish Authority. They did an excellent job for me. They're out of Atlanta. Um, I think I told you in the first time the cover person, literally, the artist put about, I don't know, 10 people to work, and they developed at least 50 covers for me and let me choose among them. We eliminated them as we went to, and these covers were fantastic. And some just, they're really good, but you say that's really good, but it's not what I had in mind. And they listened to my feedback, and we developed this one at the end. It came down to four, and they were four beautiful covers, and I had to eliminate three, and that was like eliminating three out of your four kids to me. I was like, I loved them all. I even asked them, I said, isn't there a way we could keep the others for something? They said, no, you got to pick one. So I said, all right. So we picked one, but I broke my heart.
Yeah, and they are if memory serves, they're a hybrid publisher, right? So
Yes, they are.
yeah, so there's a little bit
Yes,
up front, but they do a lot of stuff for you at
yes,
lower cost.
yes,
And yeah,
absolutely.
I would say that cover is top notch. It's definitely high quality. I like it. It would catch my eye if I was in the bookstore.
The
Uh,
person who did it, her name is Reagan Rebstock. She's the,
oh, so they actually
she has
gave you the artist. Okay, that's cool.
yes, I talked to her on the phone over and over and gave her feedback. And I think at times I drove them crazy, but they never let me know they drove them crazy. They were always understanding, but I always felt like when they hung up the phone, they were like, oh, I'm going to kill this guy. But they were always professional to me, nice to me. Oh, it's no problem at all. So they just were fantastic.
Yeah, I definitely have a similar experience with working on these overlays. They probably hate me too. I think everyone. I think when you have something like you're envisioning in your head and you just want to try to convey it, but you don't really know how to talk their language, it can be difficult. But
Yes.
I think you guys achieved something really nice there.
Yes, they
And
did.
so
I'm so thrilled with what they did.
it serves you right. That leads us into what you're working on now. Serves you right. It continues the story of Sydney Livingstone, which I think was a very brilliant move on your part to change careers. I think a lot of people, when they're doing that, kind of like fear change, and they're like, well, I wrote it this way, people liked it that way, I don't want to change too much from that way. And you're like, it, I'll just change it completely. But it's a change that makes sense. It's written
Yes.
in the story originally, and you found a way for her path to continue that made logical sense.
Yeah, I've
um
had some people say that. Some people say, "Well, you wouldn't think a tennis player would change his career because they're thinking of someone that played on TV and
mhm.
made millions." But again, that's the top 10%. 90% of tennis players, and I've known several of them that have been competed on the pro tour or have tried to. They barely make it, and
Yeah,
that's more regular than not.
that's not just tennis players, that's football players, baseball players, writers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Writers, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
us don't
even
don't
salespeople.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. um
Yes.
So I do want to talk to you about the genesis of the idea of behind serves you right. Um, can you give us a little, not without, I don't want you to spoil anything, but give us a little bit of the plot in which you're moving your character through in this new book, this new direction.
Okay. Good question. Sydney, she's got a degree in criminology, and she tests really high on the test to get into police work. So with that, she gets to skip a little bit of some of the field work that they would have to do initially, so you can be a detective sooner. So she gets to become a detective. Now she's very young, and she's some people have seen her compete and they know she's a professional tennis player, but no really criminology experience except school. She's very young, female in a male dominated system,
Hmm.
and they do a lot of things that the way the good old boys did it. So she comes in, she's green, she's trying to learn, she's eager, she's optimistic, but there's a lot of things wanting it to do the old way, and that creates a little bit of a not a problem, a little bit of some interference there, and she evolves as a character, and interestingly enough, so does the whole precinct. They evolve along with her.
Yeah, a little natural conflict there. That is good. And I do remember and I kind of want to, manifest it again. I was complimenting you on the idea of like these are your first stories and you went with a female lead, which is difficult for men to do and vice versa. And so like I really commended you for like putting her in the spotlight and be like, she's going to be my heroine. She's going to solve the problems. And
Yes.
that's not something that's very often done, especially with male authors. I do kind of wonder what led you, like, where your interest pulled from when it comes to crime thrillers and stuff. Is that something that you endeavored in from your youth, or have you just like been kind of like in that mindset of like I like mysteries, and so I thought I'd write a mystery?
Yeah, I grew up reading Agatha Christie and Mary Higgins Clark, and then evolved to James Patterson and other ones. So I always like trying to figure it out. As a sleuth, am I really good when I'm reading somebody else? Average, When I do figure it out, I feel like a hero, but a lot of times I don't. So I fall for the red herrings as well as anybody else does. So just because I write them doesn't mean I don't fall for them. But I really enjoy the challenge of that. As a family, I have, and I live with three females. I got two daughters and a wife. We never had any sons, so not that that helped me write about a female character, but I could ask them for advice, and they could kind of help me as well. But I just had a natural inclination to do the mysteries, to solve a puzzle. I like the unknown. Tennis is that way too. When you play a tennis match, you could be in it 2.5 hours, and you have no idea whether you're going to win or lose. You don't know in 10 minutes if you are going to be really happy or really sad. You don't know, and I love that unknown, that I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I like a mystery. It's not like if I read a book where I know kind of what's going to happen and it's just a love story or whatever, nothing against them, but you kind of know where it's going and there's no surprise. I like that feeling of not knowing and being surprised at the end. I just enjoy that. I don't know why.
I like, yeah, I'm with you on that. I definitely like the unknown. I like to try to solve it. I'm one of those people. I know a lot of that's another key factor. Is it's like I feel like some authors in mystery feel like they need to pull the rug out at the last moment, and that's not a real good like way to, because it's a two-party system. It's not just your story. You have an audience, and you're trying to entertain them.
Yes.
It's actually it kind of if when you boil it down, it works a little bit differently than other stories, because other stories there's like let me hold your hand and you just kind of enjoyed the ride. But
Right.
with mysteries, it's like I'm gonna like take you to the scene, I'm gonna present the evidence to you, you kind of conjure it up in your head and you come up with the story, and then at the end we'll see
Yes.
if we're both right. And so
Yes.
it's a different type of thing.
You have to be fair with the reader.
Mhm.
You can't throw in something that wasn't there at the end and surprise. That's not fair. Or I read a book once where it got to the climax and the person died in a car accident and it never got to the climax, and I'm like, that's a cop out. You gotta let it go full. As a kid, I still remember. Now, this is what I thought of as a kid, watching The Wizard of Oz. So I'm watching The Wizard of Oz. Everybody's getting into it as a kid, but you realize at the end of The Wizard of Oz, it never got solved because Dorothy is still in the same place. The old lady's still after the dog. The dog's home. She's still going to have to give up the dog, and that bothered me as a kid. I was like, okay, she had this dream, but now they're still going to come and take your dog away.
Yeah,
So you kind of were back to where you were.
and the resolution of the witch didn't make any sense because they don't really create any prior information that witches are apparently hydrophobic, and they're
Yes.
splashed with water they'll instantly die. And so like that's,
Yes.
and I do love that like authors have seen that kind of logic and then tried to create their own story where it's just like, well, yeah, that was just a facade. The witch like cast a spell to make it look like she disappeared, but she's still there. So that's
Yes.
I love it when writers do that. I do. Let's just go ahead and open it up into a general discussion since we're
Mhm.
going pretty back and forth now. I think that leads into like, what elements do you find that you enjoy writing the most when you're writing a mystery or anything in general?
When you say elements, what do you mean?
So, I mean, like, we could focus on like you really enjoy two well-defined characters that you've created, like kind of bantering back and forth. A lot of writers like banter. Some are kind of scene descriptions. Some are like crafting the puzzle and trying to make it like get that balance between confusing but still illuminating to the fact that where the
Yes.
audience can follow along but doesn't get the answer right away. So,
Yeah.
elements like that.
I like to bring a lot of people into the story and have a lot of people, appear and go out and everybody tries to have a purpose. And I try to make everybody also have a motive or either a motive or do something maybe that's a little off the beaten path because you just never know. You never know what what is a guilty thing and what is just ordinary action. Give you an example. I had somebody once break into my house, and it was when I was on a vacation. And in my mind, I had 5 different people convicted. In my mind, who it was. Thought it was somebody I might have known. I had 5 different people. I had them. I had the judge. I was the judge, jury, and executioner. I knew who it was. Comes out, it was a complete stranger. I had no idea. Now I never accused anybody, but in my mind, I had already thought who would have a motive and who was home, and it was nothing to do with that. It was just a random thing. So I like to kind of bring that in my mysteries. Have somebody act a little suspicious, but maybe somebody be a real jerk, but that doesn't mean they're the culprit, or maybe they are. Maybe the obvious person is the culprit. Sometimes I do that as well. So I like to be very random with that, just so I don't have a pattern in any of my novels.
Little smoke screens. Yeah, those are.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that does kind of mirror, maybe not the audience uh, mentality, but I think it does kind of mirror the reality of police, where it's like, I'm a detective. I have a suspicion of who it might be, but I still have to talk to all these people, and then the more people I talk to, the more it feels like I have more suspects on my list
Yes.
than
Yes.
I started with. Yeah, so I think
We
that's
watch
a
Dateline. We watch Dateline as a family. We've had since my kids were little, and we're watching, and they have Dateline, 48 hours, prime time, whatever it is, and they get down to 4 suspects. And when they're showing one, you're sure that person's it. Showing two, you're sure that person's it. So you just never know. And I just enjoy the chase. And I'm right some of the times. I'm not right other times. I just enjoy, and I also like the criminal aspect of the trial because I think a lot of people, and this is serves you right, really what serves you right is about is someone is beating the raps in court. So several people have beaten the rap. Now these people are being stalked for whatever reason. And the question is it a vigilante? What's the reason someone's going after people who have obviously beaten the rap? And I think that happens. I think we can all name cases where we've seen that someone got out on a technicality or whatever reason they beat the charges, and we know they were guilty, or we pretty much sure they were guilty. So a vigilante is taking over and going after these people on their own. And I think that made for a fascinating story.
yeah, and I think we as audience members like to kind of root for the vigilante. I think because just life in general, kind of we feel like the system's bucking against us, and so it's just so natural to be like, well, of course there's corruption, and then when someone's out there just doing what we all kind of wanted to do, not to throw in a wrestling reference, but that's why like Stone Cold Steve Austin got so popular back in the day, is because like we all wanted to beat the shit out of our boss, but we
Yes.
couldn't, and he got to do that for
Yes.
us, and so yeah, I think we kind
Yes.
of start rooting for him. But there is a moral
Absolutely.
conundrum in there of like, yeah, he's doing what we want, but he's also like breaking the law and perhaps going too far.
Yes, and so there are times I think for the most part, people are rooting for Sydney Livingstone to solve the mystery because she's a flawed character. She doesn't always do things right. She's young, she's inexperienced, but she always has the right intentions and she never gives up. So I think the reader will side with her. She's a great main character, someone you really want to root for, as she solves this crime. Um, whether someone has empathy for the vigilante, you might want to read the whole thing and make a decision afterwards, and then see where you end up.
Yeah. I know you mentioned Agatha Christie and you know Dateline, but is there like any other inspirations that you find like were really pulling at you to create mystery novels, or just to start writing in general? I guess.
Yeah. I had the idea about the tennis player because I really know tennis well. And the first one is more about a tournament of a woman competing in a tournament. And it gets into the actual more of the tennis itself, how tournament players work, how they practice, how they train, what happens during the matches, what the crowd influences. So it's very tennis centered. Serves You Right obviously has the same main character, but anyone could read that, and you don't have to be a fan of tennis. In my first book, some people said, well, I didn't want to read it because they saw the tennis ball and they said, I'm not a tennis fan. And I was like, well, I don't ride trains, but I read Agatha Christie. So it's not quite the same thing, but
That's
there's
a good,
nobody to
yeah.
argue with
That's an
sometimes. So
excellent point. I did want to mention, because I know the last time we talked, you did say that for your first for faults, you did like go to a proper tennis tournament and for research and stuff.
yes,
I don't know if you want to recap
sure.
that for us.
There's one in Cincinnati, actually Mason, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. It's held every year. It's now called the Cincinnati Open. It used to be called the ATP. But I go to that maybe twice a year, watch the tennis pros. And so that was part of my experience. Now, it actually, we put it in a different city, the setting, but that's kind of where I got the layout of the tournament, where the courts are located, how they practice, where the players come in and out, where they park, all in the crowd, how they let the crowds in. So I used that as a template. Actually walked through and filmed it and used that as a template.
That's cool.
So when I was writing, I could actually see it, because I think if you can visualize something, you can write about it. It's when you try to wing it, but you don't really know what you're seeing, it becomes a little clunky.
Yeah, and I think I would encourage writers that don't have experience in those things to do what you did. Even though you had experience before, just getting your eyeballs in there and kind of getting a sense of scope and size. Because I do feel like some people just try to wing it, and then the area they're describing or what they're describing just feels very small because
Yes,
that's how they see it in their head. But some of these places, especially like football fields and stuff like that, these stadiums are massive, and so
yes,
it really helps to kind of
absolutely.
be there and see the scope of it.
Be there and have it fresh in your memory. Absolutely.
So I think last time I asked you this, I can't remember what the answer was, but I'm going to shoot it back to you anyway because I think it's a
Okay.
fun question, and that is your thoughts on like motif genre versus just a standard non-theme genre. So basically, like if you think of like Castle, where it's like I'm X with job and I'm solving crimes, is that more interesting to you versus just like a standard detective story?
Um, you know, I like the standard detective story, because, well, put it this way: the person is obviously, if you're doing a detective story and the person is an investigator, you know that they're going to have a lot of different cases they're going to be on. So it's nothing different, uh, to have them investigating a case every month, every week, whatever it is. That's normal. But having someone, I always used to laugh at not, I used to love the show, but you remember Murder She Wrote with
Mm-hmm.
Angela Lansbury?
Yep.
She was just an ordinary person, and everywhere she would go, she wasn't even really an investigator. She would be where there was a murder was. So you didn't want to be where she was, wherever she was,
Yeah.
even though that wasn't her job. So I liked it a little better, where you're kind of naturally doing your job and you kind of investigate as part of your job. Then you just happen to stumble. You walk into a place and there's a dead body, and now you start to figure it out. I think you're pressing believability a little bit too much.
Yeah, and I think as a writer, you kind of you paint yourself in this box where it's like, well, now I have to like ad nauseum explain why it's okay for this person to be in this crime scene.
Yes, yes,
But
yes.
I think there's merit to both. I do agree with what you said. I think just watching someone kind of like in their element and doing their job is very interesting. But I kind of do like these like motif things where it's, hey, I'm uh, a mentalist and I can solve crimes. I remember
Yes, yes.
one. This is a TV show. I don't know if you. I can't remember the name of it, so I'm not even going to try. But basically, he was a chess grandmaster that had like agoraphobia, and he was like locked up in a hotel, and he was solving crimes inside this hotel. Now,
Wow.
now that kind of idea can't last, but it's cool in
Right.
its bubble.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Fresh ideas are wonderful. It is so hard to become original. I mean, most of the top stories that are out there, if you break down the story in little pieces, it's nothing completely original. It's not the Hunger Games. Hunger Games was something. Final Destination is another one that comes to mind. Completely original idea, but most of them are good ideas, and the characters bring the story along. So
Now that you mention that, I do think that Korea is having like some kind of revolution or renaissance
yes,
happening in storytelling because they are coming up with like a lot of unique concepts, even if it's just taking a standard concept and just throwing it in some weird timeline that we never expected. Like they have a show out called Kingdom where it's like zombies in the Ottoman Empire or something. You're just like, yeah,
right,
that's crazy. But
right.
yeah, they have a lot of
Well,
interesting ideas.
what's the one I can't think of the name where they would those things would shoot the people? What was that called? I can't think of the name in Korea where the big thing would shoot the people and they let them out in the courtyard. They were
Oh,
eliminating them.
yeah, the Squid Games.
Squid Games. I couldn't think of that. Yeah, that was an original idea,
Hmm.
and I watched the first one, and because it was so original, I watched every episode of that because I'd never seen an idea like that,
Yeah,
and it was unique. And whether you liked it or not, I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked the idea, so I watched it because it was really fresh. It's really hard to come up with those ideas, though. You got to be really creative.
and I was impressed with what they because like when you watch the first season, you're just like, I don't know what they could do, and they bring it back for a second season, and you're just like, yeah, this is interesting. I love the fact that the guy from the first one opts to come back. Like he almost kind of like digs around in the muck so that he can get chosen again, and they bring him
Yes,
back, and they know he's there,
yes,
and then you have that whole mystery of like, well, will he reveal the fact that he's been here before? How will they react when when they find out? It was genius, and like
yes.
how is the system, the system going to react because they know he knows the games? Are they going to change the games?
Right,
We don't know.
right.
Are they
Brought a
going to?
lot of unanswered questions up. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Are they going to cheat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is interesting. And it kind of moves me into a different question for you. Is it something that you find important? Is it like, do you hinge more on a simple plot versus complex characters, or do you prefer complex plots versus simple characters?
If I had to answer that, I would say the characters are more complex and the plot is maybe a little simpler, not completely simple, but a little different. But the characters, again, I think I mentioned that, are what drives the whole idea. As you see them evolve, as you see them change, you see them act unexpectedly or do things what you do expect. However, that brings it along. And then you see them evolve as people. Like I have someone in this book that starts out really bad and ends out not so awful. Not great, but not so awful, becoming a little more human. So, and I think that's how we are as people. We evolve, we learn, and some people get better, some get worse. But I think that kind of drives the plot a lot more, the characters. I'm more into characters and people than I am just a straight plot. But I like both, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, clearly. I mean, I think we all like both, but I think we do kind of lean towards one. I do see a lot of like newer authors really like pushing the plot, and like they're like really kind of hanging on to like, ooh, this is a unique idea, and it's like, well, that's good, but if if the car you're riding in isn't very comfortable, who the cares what the road looks like? you
No
know,
one, no
no
one at
one.
all.
Yeah, no
No one
one's
at all.
gonna. Yeah, if the ride isn't comfortable, you just be like, this. It was a horrible trip.
You can make any idea good, and you can screw up a great idea if you do it wrong. So no doubt, I'm totally with that.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. I forget who said that, but yeah, that is a great point. In fact, I've heard it said a good author can turn a bad idea marketable, and a bad author can turn a good idea to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think I don't want to keep you too long. I know you said you had to get out of here. I think we're kind of breaching that time frame. So I'm going to go ahead and just start letting people know how to get a hold of you. You can get in touch with him through Facebook at orion.gregory.98, or you can find Serves You Right on Amazon. We'll put all the links and stuff below. Is there anything anything I'm missing in regards to your socials or handles?
My website is oriongregory.com.
All
The
right, and
www before
yeah,
that.
we'll definitely add that.
Okay. I love when people get on and ask me questions, talk to me, want more information. Love that. I totally love hearing from my readers. So, yeah, anytime anybody has a question, a comment, please let me know. I try to put some funny stuff on occasionally just to try to keep it, light. I don't always advertise my books. I might talk of just a funny story that I heard just to get people to laugh. I'm a little crazy with puns. I think one of my books, it says the only, what is it, the only bad pun is the one left unsaid. So I when there's a pun, I'm gonna say it. Sometimes it's not the best timing, but if it's there, I have to say it. So please feel free to relax. And I'm a regular guy. I love to talk with any reader.
I think your love of puns is because you're a dad.
Yes,
I
yes.
also have that problem.
Yeah, and my kids don't even laugh anymore at me. They used to laugh. Thought when they were young, they thought I was hysterical. Now they just look at me like, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
But both my daughters have boyfriends, so that gives me some fresh material. But now I'm running out of that too because they've been around me a little long. So,
yeah. My daughter just looks at me and shakes her head. She's like, "Dad," I'm like, "You're 12. You're supposed to laugh at this stuff." Uh,
absolutely.
so before I let you go, I do want to let everyone know we at the Fitz of Writing do release Telltale writing prompts every Tuesday. We release the written form in the morning, and then at night I release like an audio version of it. I encourage everyone to participate. Orion, I encourage you to participate if you want.
I will.
It's a very simple thing. I find an image online. Sean or I write like the story we see through that image, and we encourage you guys to do the same, whether it's poetry, whether it's a short narrative story, just a lore dump, or maybe just dialogue between two characters that you see that's in that image. And post it in the comments. Go ahead and tell me if you like the ones we do or not. Keep an eye on our Facebook for any major announcements. That's where you're going to find out where like the next episodes are or what me and Sean are up to. And then like, comment, and subscribe. I guess we'll call it there and fade to black.